So much to Brian, Dorian, and everyone here at the Globe program for having me. Can you guys see my screen?
Looks great.
Okay, wonderful. Well, again, I'm Brenda Siglitz with the Keystone 10 Million Trees program. We're part of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and I'm located here in South Central Pennsylvania. We go by the term clean water grows on trees because our program is predominantly focused on how we can clean up water in our local streams, creeks, including our local large river, which is the Susquehanna River, and then how that flows into the Chesapeake Bay. And so we focus a lot on reforestation. And so our biggest goal is planting 10 million trees across Pennsylvania by 2025. And we do that in a variety of ways. We look at places to plant along streams. We look at upland and suburban areas, including places in your cities and streets. And we also look at mine lands. We'll talk about that a little bit today as well. These are some of the reasons that we plant trees in Pennsylvania, especially as we focus on clean water. The first is the Chesapeake Bay Blueprint, which is just really a set of goals that we have to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. And I'll talk about that on the next slide, but we need to make the Chesapeake Bay a lot more healthier than it is now. So that's one of the reasons that we're planting trees all along the rivers and streams here in Pennsylvania, because all of that water flows down into the Chesapeake Bay. And each of the counties here in Pennsylvania has a different action plan for how many trees that they need to plant by 2025. So we're helping them get closer to that. And in addition, they have different stormwater systems as the rain flows down from the sky and hits the macadam or hits the pavement and the concrete and flows into the waterways. That those trees can help capture that runoff. And those trees also help clean your air, your water. They sequester carbon. There's also great economic and financial value to trees. And last but not least, they help care for the nature and environment, which is one of the reasons I love them so much. The trees for the bay, these are really kind of the three big things that we look at for the bay. So you can see on the far left, kind of that map of the years since the Chesapeake Bay Foundation was founded back in 1967 and how things were looking. The Chesapeake Bay really wasn't very healthy back then, and things were looking kind of scary as far as the health of the bay and how the fish and oysters and wildlife were in the bay. So they were looking at ways that they could improve the health, which is why the Chesapeake Bay Foundation was formed. Fast forward to 2018, and this program, the Keystone 10 Million Trees program, as part of the Making History campaign, was formed. There's two other components to that as well. There's 10 billion oysters for the bay and 1 million voices for the bay. And we're super excited about all of those goals and how they work together to clean water. And you can see our goal is to get to that improving and stable environment for the bay by 2025, but you can see the goals continue up from there as we try to improve the health of the bay to get it to that saved point where it's really healthy and maybe back to where it was one day. You can see a lot of Pennsylvania, where I live, is in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So that means all of the trees and all the water in that area flows down, it's protected in that watershed. And then on the far right, you'll notice that there's these areas called dead zones. So these are areas in the Chesapeake Bay where they might be the hottest, where they have the least amount of oxygen. And so that's why it's really important for us to plant as many trees as possible to be able to improve the health and make sure that there's lots of life in the bay. We have lots of different components to our program. The first is increasing the demand for trees. So if you know anything about business, this is sort of like a business model. So if you think about Amazon, if you ever do any Amazon online shopping, you can think about increasing the demand. So this would be the things that you want from Amazon. So how do we make landowners want trees? So we work on that. And then you think about who's going to sell you that thing on Amazon. So we work on gathering the supply of trees. So we work with all of these growers in Pennsylvania and the Mid-Atlantic to make sure that they have the supply of trees to get that for you. So we work on increasing them growing trees. And then we try to bring them together both through our website and through marketing and meeting people in the community to tell them the benefits of trees in their community. And one of the issues that we're addressing is seed source needs and tree survival. And you can see down in that maintenance and care area, this is where tree height observation all comes in. And that's where we really like collaborating with the NASA GLOBE program. Placement is also really important. We look again along planting along streams, looking at those stormwater projects, suburban street trees, and abandoned and legacy mine lands. So these were places that previously had coal mining, which was a really popular practice at one time in Pennsylvania and still going on. And we look at reforesting those areas to bring nutrients back into those areas and stabilize those lands. You can see all the different benefits happening of trees. The precipitation comes down, evaporation goes up. You have trees capturing and infiltrating all of this wonderful liquid coming in and recharging the ground, the soil and the groundwater. In addition, it takes up nitrates from the ground, takes them out of the water so that it helps clean up our water. It helps cool the environment around us. And then all these mycorrhizal fungi process. And there's just lots of awesome things happening with trees that we don't even see and know about on an everyday basis. We also collaborate, as Brian mentioned, with the Girl Scouts program in Pennsylvania and the Girl Scouts program of the Chesapeake Bay, which is located in Maryland and Virginia. So there's lots of ways Girl Scouts can get involved through identifying trees in their neighborhood. We have Learn Outside, Learn at Home investigations, which has been really important during the pandemic. You can research your community's land use and how trees have been impacted by that. We also encourage you to raise awareness about the importance of trees. Take a hike and take your NASA Globe Observer application with you and start measuring tree heights. We even have our own Observer Trees team for the Keystone 10 Million Trees Partnership. You could develop a skit or a community tree planting, or just enjoy being part of a community tree planting. There's lots of ways to get involved in that collaboration. We also published a blog just last month with Brian and Dorian and the NASA GLOBE program, and we actually looked at tree heights in one of our tree plantings in the Moshannon State Forest, which is up in northwestern Pennsylvania. And this is a former mine land planting site. So you can see this area in the middle, and at one point that was completely deforested, meaning there were no trees in that area. And when the ISAT-2 went over that area, it took measurements of trees, and we compared that to the trees that we planted. And we were actually able to get some measurements on the trees, which you can see the heights measuring at 15 feet on some of those trees on the left, and comparing that with the trees that were planted back in 2019. So we're really excited about some of the data coming out of this and being able to use the comparisons of the ISAT data and also being able to see what's happening in the ground with our trees and out in the field. But ultimately, we need people and students and volunteers out in the field to be able to take the measurements and make sure that these are accurate so that we know that the trees are surviving. This is a huge list. I don't expect you guys to look through it and understand it all, but these are all the different types and varieties of trees that we offer. We do offer all native Pennsylvania trees, which means these trees are all native to the area, indigenous to the area, all except for one that we're working because of climate change, as it's well adapted to how climate change is moving throughout the area. So we try to offer and work with our growers to source the seeds to be able to grow these trees throughout the year for us. But planting trees is not just about getting that seed in the ground and the seedling in the ground. We really want to make sure that they're maintained and they survive, which takes about a 5-year commitment from that little 12-inch seedling to grow into a nice stable tree so that hopefully it gets to be the size of that tree that you see in the picture and maybe grow to 50, 100, 250 years old. And the way we can really track that progress is tree height. So that is where the Globe Observer tool comes in handy to be able to track that survival. All these little blots all over are where we have tree plantings all across Pennsylvania. To date, we've provided over 400,000 trees directly, But us and our partners, which are made up now of over 180 partners, have planted over 3 million trees together, which is phenomenal. So our goal is of incorporating maintenance tracking and tree height tracking into this GIS tree tracker that we have so that we can make sure that we are staying on track with our goals. You can see our partners are located all over the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and you can see they're really centered around that big blue line in the middle, which is the Susquehanna River, and all of that flows into the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We also work a lot with the CBF, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation Education Program, and they offer some phenomenal ways for students to get out in the field. So we take them on trips to the bay. Here you can see people throwing out crab boats out into the bay. We take people on canoe trips. We also have student leadership summer expeditions, which are actually starting up again this fall, but there'll be some additional online programming throughout this year that you can email our education coordinator about if you're interested in that. And then we also have programming for educators and for superintendents, anyone who's working with students to do online trainings to learn about outdoor education and science education in their classrooms. So I encourage you guys to check out 10milliontrees.org. Use the hashtag Keystone10mtrees if you're doing anything trees in Pennsylvania. And don't hesitate to reach out to me if you're curious about how close we're getting to planting 10 million